we know big alcohol is losing money left and right. And instead of adapting and being like good business operators and competing fairly, they're cowards and they try to tell people your medicine is gone. I think we're going to see an increase in harm to American citizens in places that used to have access to this, and they're not going to have that access, and it's going to be harmful.
So today we're talking about the Farm Bill.
Mm-hmm.
You heard it. And the new hemp ban. Yikes. Boo.
Thumbs fucking down, dude.
Period. Okay, so let's talk about the Farm Bill first. What exactly is the Farm Bill? I think we've talked about it before, but can you just give us a little
So here's the deal. The government in this Farm Bill is like, hey, we're trying to do a bunch of things. It's like a 30,000 page document, and they cover a bunch of stuff in there. What they were trying to do essentially was they were trying to say, hey, how do we allow farmers to grow hemp, and where do we distinguish the difference between hemp and cannabis? Mm-hmm. But in short, yeah, they were just trying to allow a pathway for farmers to produce hemp, and this was a way to legally define the difference between hemp and cannabis.
How did they legally define hemp?
Flour or goods or anything that is 0.3% Delta-9 THC by weight. Mm-hmm. So if you have 1 gram of whatever that is, be it a flour or a cookie or whatever it is, 0.3% of that 1 gram can be D9 THC.
And so why does that definition matter so much?
Delta-9 is the primary intoxicating cannabinoid from the plant. Mm-hmm. So where the federal government sees that as an intoxicating drug, they say, well, if it contains less than this amount of this intoxicating drug, that makes it non-intoxicating and makes it hemp.
Gotcha. So a lot of people say that the Farm Bill gave way to the hemp loophole.
Yep.
Was it actually a loophole, or?
I think these are important questions because these are the questions the internet and the world and everybody are talking about. And these are the things circulating on the socials. What I do know is that we're here and we're now. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to ignore, like you let the phrase I love that one of my dear friends uses is, and I think a lot of people have used it, is like you put the toothpaste out of the tube. You can't really put it back in. We've established that there's a demand.
Watch me. Give me some toothpaste. Just kidding. Just kidding. Well, okay, so let's talk about this industry impact.
Yeah.
So how did the hemp market evolve differently because of the licensed recreational cannabis market?
So like, here's a perfect example, right? Like you can go onto our website and have that shipped through the mail. You could never do that.
Have what shipped through the mail? Like recreational?
Yeah. No. Hemp products you can have shipped through the mail.
Right.
Recreational cannabis products could never be shipped.
Okay. So
it's only like they don't do any of that. They don't really even do, in a lot of cases, direct to consumer, meaning you have to flow it through a regulatory system that winds up at a retail location that in every step of the way, there's a metric tag, a blue tag with an RFID that tracks every single piece of the product. And it has to be exactly where you say it is at all times. Obviously, tracking of inventory is good, but it's just an overregulated system. And so because of that, it hampers the distribution of the product. It can hamper the farming of the product. I mean, in California at one point, they were taxing the crop as you harvested it. Right. So that's ridiculous. The primary ways I really think it affects is really in its access, right? It's how it's produced, how it's accessed. And I think you have a lot more room for small business development in the hemp space, whereas in the recreational spaces, like in Oregon, if you got a license, say in like 2016, and you applied for that, and you had to get a building. You had to get a lease on a building, and you had to have a lease on a building to submit an application to get a recreational cannabis license. The state was taking as much as 18 months, 2 years to approve licenses. So you were going to sit there as a small business owner operating your shop actually not operating your shop, just waiting for a permit to do business, paying a lease, paying insurance, having all this stuff security systems, everything built and in line just to be able to get a permit, versus like here, we can follow normal standard business operating procedures like any other business. There's not zero regulation in this space. There's just not over hampered regulation like that. So the way that those things developed differently was you have a lot more access because on the hemp side, simply because you operate it like a normal business.
Because it's federally legal.
Correct. So in cannabis, you can't have a FDIC insured bank account, right? Like because that's a federal program and they won't federally insure funds that they consider to be drug money. So like you can't use a credit card at any recreational cannabis space. They might take your debit card potentially, and they do weird like debit to the nearest 20 so that it looks like an ATM transaction. But the reality is that the credit card processors will not allow you to process anything for cannabis. They will allow you to process it for hemp. UPS allows you to get a hemp program. They will not do that for cannabis, right? So it's really a logistical issue that creates these two separate pathways. And one is just like any other business, and the other one is like, it's like you want to, it's more regulated than pharmaceuticals.
Let's talk about recreational versus hemp market. So why do so many people rely on the hemp market instead of the recreational dispensaries? It sounds like kind of what we talked about, like you can order in the mail and do stuff like that. It's a little bit more direct to consumer.
Yeah, and I think also it's just, there's plenty of states where you just don't have recreational or medical cannabis. Like Texas is a massive space where people clearly see the benefit of the plant and what it offers to them, and they want it. They wanted it so bad that they tried to ban it there, and they fought back. And I was a part of that. I was at the Capitol in Austin, and shout out to Texas for really showing up and saying, we the people want this. And so people use the hemp markets mostly, I would say, because they don't have access to cannabis.
Gotcha. So it's a way, for it to reach people who live in states that are not, where it's not legal. That's
a number one reason. There are other reasons too, because there's some markets where there's crossover.
Yeah.
And part of that then is cost and taxation. We're simple creatures. Sometimes we're just like, that's the place on the way home. And it's like I go there and I buy the THCA. And if I go to a dispensary and I buy a 25% THC cannabis product, well, guess what? The majority of that percentage is comprised of THCA. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. It's like one of them's overregulated, one of them's underregulated, and we need to find that balancing point between those two spaces and unify the markets, in this humble man's opinion.
You heard it here. Where does Modern Herb Co. fit into this space compared to a traditional cannabis brand? So they fit into the hemp.
Yeah, right. I think we're right next to them. And because a lot of us come from that space, like we work directly with farmers, like we're in touch with the harvest. We are working with people who are really passionate about the plant themselves. And we've just chosen a different pathway. But all of us originated, in the pursuit of the plant. And that's why it's like, I brought up earlier, it's like I started selling weed when it was completely illegal, completely black market, just like to the friends and the homies and like the occasional person at work, and nothing crazy. But I did that for a long time, and then, worked in the medical side and had a medical card and did that. And then we went recreational. So the market's evolved a lot. And to me, I actually see the hemp market as like, it's like that. It was that next evolution after the recreational space in a lot of ways. And Modern Herb Co., because all of us came from that recreational space, we kind of try to take what we learned in the recreational space about testing and compliance and, just delivering a good product, and, fresh frozen inputs and rosins and live resins and all these things. All of that knowledge comes from the cannabis industry because, again, it just ties back to it's just one plant. So, for us, we use a lot of the same standards, if not beyond, even to a higher degree than some recreational states, but at minimum on par with. So, and that's, that's what what we're talking about there is like when you get a vape from Modern Herb Co., you can scan a QR code on the box that links directly to the COA or the certificate of analysis that shows you the potency panels and the safety panels and shows you that what you're smoking is free of heavy metals, free of pesticides. It's been processed properly and cleanly, right? So long story fucking longer than ever. We're paralleled, I think, in a lot of ways to those brands. And that's why, if you go to our site, you'll see it's dispensary grade is our kind of tagline there. And the thought process is, it's possible to make, because it's one plant and because there is a quote unquote loophole, I think it's possible to make products that are superior to what you might even find in a dispensary.
And it sounds like for you guys too, it's just like direct consumer access is an important thing.
This plant is medicine, right? And its purpose, as far as my opinion on how it formed in nature and our interaction with it, the fact that every mammal on earth has an ECS, the fact that there's these terpenes that are found in this plant that you find in all these other plants throughout the world. I think all that says that it's medicine. And I think access to medicine is more important, whether we like this or not, than just like getting high. But I think that there is therapy and therapeutic use for cannabis that a lot of people may consider recreational, but actually really is medicinal. And I think that really at the root of all this, the reason we're here at all is because medical patients decided to stand up and fight and say, we need access to medicine. So I think at the end of the day, if we're doing anything other than serving the needs of the people who want this plant medicine, as in terms of like regulation, we're failing as a society, as a government, as a people.
Are you going to run for office? Thinking about it?
They'd cancel me too quick.
Let's get a campaign.
Somebody'd be like, I did drugs back in 98.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about this new ban then. So what is the ban? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
I mean, there's some people who speculate that because Mitch McConnell was the architect who kind of ushered in the 2018 Farm Bill and had this slip in there, that he kind of wanted to shut the loophole, if you will, before he rides off into the evil sunset. In short, it's basically trying to cap any amount of Delta-9 THC, no matter the percentage, to 0.4 milligrams, which is basically you'll process that. They're like, no one would get high on that.
Gotcha.
And so what their thought is to say, hey, by doing this, we will remove, we'll close the loophole. And so they slipped it in with this, continuing resolution bill to get the GOV back open. So this wasn't something that people voted for, right? Like this was something that was slipped in by scuzzy and slimy individuals at a last minute to serve probably big alcohol's will. We see old turtle face himself, Mitch McCon.
Yep.
Mitch McCon, the con man. He took $900,000 roughly or so. We know big alcohol is losing money left and right because it isn't really medicine for people. It's really not. They are seeing Gen Z and they're seeing these new generations lean away from alcohol and they're feeling that. And instead of, adapting and being like good business operators and competing fairly, they're cowards and they try to attack a plant. And let's be real, they're losing. They've been losing for a long time. This plant's still around. Its propagation has only increased. And our relationship to it as humans, I think, is just getting better every day. So it's just funny to watch these motherfuckers lose a fight to a plant. And it really is, I think it's a lot of pressure from alcohol.
So they're pushing for this years after the Farm Bill was passed.
Yeah.
Is that for sure? Like why? Like, is that the main reason you're saying?
I think so. That's my speculation.
Okay.
This, again, opinion of a person who knows some, but relatively little compared to what there is to know.
Do you think also they've noticed, like they didn't do, because again, going back to if that one was intentional before, do you think they're seeing now like, oh, whoops, there was a loophole. We need to close it? Or
I think it's, I think it's
a combination of issues.
Yeah, I think it's like some people are speculating that Mitch McConnell and some of these Republicans are like, oh, we don't want this to tarnish our reputations and we want to close it. And then but I don't even think that's it. I mean, if these people cared about their reputation's like, come on.
Yeah. I know.
So I think it's just funding from a place that, like, look, if somebody funds your campaign, they got hooks in you.
Were you saying that alcohol was lobbying against the hemp
100%.
industry? Who else is lobbying, or what else is lobbying?
So I
against the
can't
hemp
say for certain that anybody else is. I mean, we can speculate that, you would have the pharmaceutical industries are probably seeing some loss there.
Sure.
I would put more money on big alcohol, and here's why, right? When you go into like Total Wine, or you go into like even Erewhon, like you're going into grocery stores, you're going into places where alcohol has traditionally filled that shelf space, and it's getting eaten by these products, by cannabis beverages, by cannabis edibles, or hemp beverages, hemp edibles, technically, I guess we should say.
Can we talk about what products would be most affected by this ban?
Literally everything.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not the ones that are being sold through state regulated.
Yeah, correct.
So they would be okay.
But there
any,
is
like, hemp industry,
Yeah.
direct consumer would be affected.
Yes, and there's also language that was not renewed, and I forget. I know there's a term for it, and the internet will know it. But essentially, there was this policy that was an Obama era policy that had been renewed even under Trump's first administration, but they have, under this newest administration, chosen to not renew this policy that basically says that they won't go after state regulated programs. So there was kind of this unspoken rule that if they essentially that the federal government was going to respect a state's right on this issue, and that, from my understanding, that language is no longer in these newest versions of our budget bills. And then so I don't know enough to speak. I don't want to speak out of turn, but in short, that language protected the regulated cannabis programs, and it's not there anymore. So while this ban does seek to address something more specific with hemp, I think a broader realization of, like, any step backwards is a step backwards. And I would say, while this one doesn't directly address cannabis markets, I think it will impact them in a negative manner, because this shows that the federal government can kind of tell states what to do and push back on them. And I think it's, I mean, look, we're taking a step back, period.
Let's continue to talk about this on the impact to customers.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for customers who do rely on hemp products in states without recreational stores?
My heart says that what they should do and what they're going to do is they're going to raise hell with their politicians, because they're not going to have access. They're not going to be able to get it shipped to their door. They're not going to be able to get it anywhere. And this includes a lot of like full spectrum CBD products. But I think at the end of the day, like, it's very bad, because we're basically going to tell people your medicine is gone. And there's people who really rely on this. And I think we're going to see an increase in harm to American citizens in places that used to have access to this, and they're not going to have that access, and it's going to be harmful.
Well, when does the ban start, and what's the expected time?
So we got a year from when they signed it in. So I think November 12th is the sell down period.
Okay.
And so I think, that's good news, because that gives us time to fight back.
Sure.
It clearly shows there's not an imminent threat of public safety, because if there was, then they wouldn't have given us a year.
Yeah.
So that right there, I think, that's where we wiggle our foot in the door of public perception, to be like, hey, look, if you don't know about this issue, chances are, if you're on this channel, you know about it. If the government felt this was an imminent risk to public safety, they would not have given that sell down period.
So the ban is going to start the 12th of November, 2026.
I believe so. Yeah.
Is that when things like start, or that like
that's when the ban will legally be in place. So up until that point, the 2018 Farm Bill will be intact as the language was written in 2018. And so that new language wouldn't take effect until, I believe it's November 12th of 2026. I could be off by a day or two there.
And is there a chance, you're saying maybe, that the ban gets delayed or rewritten?
100%.
So
we're going to raise hell.
Yeah. So it's just in
gonna raise hell.
interim is when people need to like speak up if they don't want that to happen.
Yes. We talked about this, I think, the last time I was on, about, not everything being in a binary concept. And I think it really speaks to the need to unify across party lines, across all sorts of ideologies and say, look, we've got to agree on this thing. Patients need access to this. So I think, the first thing we're doing is having conversations with the right groups of people in various levels of government to, make sure they're hearing our voices about how this is going to impact us. So from senators to representatives to governors to, everybody up and down the line needs to kind of hear about this from the people. And so there's Americans for Healthy Alternatives.
Joel's mentioned that before.
Yeah, they're a group that we're kind of pointing a lot of people to. And I think it's important to kind of have unified messaging on this subject. They are a group that we're working with to really try to get that messaging out to the people on what to do, but then also awareness is the start. We have to start with awareness. Information is at the center of a good democracy. And if people want the will of themselves to be expressed, then they've got to go let their politicians know. So I'd say start with representatives and senators. Senators are a little harder to get a hold of, but your representative serves a smaller area and is obviously kind of more likely to hear you out. So I'd say, what we did in Texas that we know worked and was handwritten letters. A handwritten letter shows a lot more intent than an email. I think that's a great place to start. Show up at your local representative's office with a handwritten letter and let them know you'd like them to hear you out on why you oppose the language in this bill. Real talk, like any good movement requires labor and labor requires money. So, donating to those causes as well is a huge part of what the average individual can do. And the alcohol industry has a lot more money than we do, but they really they don't. They're just better organized. They're just better organized. And so that's what we got to do.
And continue to watch this podcast. I feel like, I don't know, that was a lot of good information. Yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. Maybe we can answer them again. We'll do round 2, round 3, round 4. Thank you so much, Patrick. It's good to see you. Marshmallows.
Yeah.